Oh, it's working. All right. I am excited to get started and hopefully not too excited. I will say we have a lot to cover. This is a pretty huge passage. And so every time I practice, it tends to go long. I'm going to try to do my best to be succinct. I did put on your tables a little, it's 3 papers stapled, and it's fill in the blank, and it has some scriptures on it. This is, if you want to use that to follow along, feel free. If you look at that and go, whoa, too much, don't look at it. It's not going to offend me at all, okay? So more than anything, it's to keep me on track. That's the goal. All right. Before I get started, if you've not met me, my name is Erika. I'm married to Matt. We've been married for 21 years, and we've been at Life Point for 21 years, and I don't know why that's going to make me teary. But if you know, every time I start to talk, I also get teary. But I will just use this chance to say what an exciting season that we are in, to see what God is stirring among us and what he's doing and how encouraging that is. And so anyway, we have 3 children. We have twin 15-year-olds, Reed and Evelyn, and then we have a 5-year-old, Isla Mae, who is the life of our house. So we're currently in the season of parenting where we do a lot of holding your breath and containing your shrieks. Okay, we have 15-year-olds. That means we have permit drivers. Now, they hadn't had their permits for very long, and we're headed home on a Sunday morning, and Matt's like, after we get off 65, we're not doing the highway yet, but after we get off 65, he's like, who wants to drive home? And I'm thinking, no. There's all 5 of us in the car. We have precious cargo. We're in the best car we own. What is he thinking? So, nevertheless, one of them hops in. I go to the very back seat, and I just want to take a quick nap. That's my preference. But anyway, it goes really well. And then we're real close to home. And all of a sudden, you can kind of tell, we're veering off the road. There's a mailbox there. As parents, we immediately see what's going to happen, right? Driver is clueless. Now, that was not a time to contain my shriek. It was time to refocus. And so we gently tried. I don't know that it was gently. I'm glad no one was recording. We got them back on the road, centered in the lane, and refocused. And when I asked, I was like, what in the world? What were you thinking? In very gracious mom mode. Well, I was just checking my speed. I just looked down for just a minute, but you took your eyes off the road. And that's what we do so many times. We take our eyes off of Christ. And when we do that, we start to go, a little this direction, and we have to recenter ourselves, okay? Maybe it's not taking our eyes off. Maybe it is simply growing numb or apathetic. This is I'm guilty of this so much. Something becomes so familiar that we lose our awe, we lose our wonder, we lose the joy that we've had. I remember years ago flying back into the Branson airport, and you look out the window, and the beauty of the Ozark Mountains in the spring. And I remember thinking, I've never seen this before. Well, I needed to zoom out. I needed to see it from a different angle because I see it every day. I'm just numb to it. So here in our passage today, this is a key text in the New Testament of Christology, or the study of Christ. It is a majestic depiction of who Jesus is. And there are doctrinal truths tucked into this that are essential to our Christian faith. These truths are actually what sets Christianity apart from every other religion. So there's so much to unpack in it, but sometimes it grows so familiar that we're like, oh, I know that. We lose our awe and our wonder. So my prayer today is that our eyes will be redirected and put back on who Christ is, that we will see his beauty, and we will want to worship with all that we are. So that was also Paul's goal. Paul knew the Colossians were no different than us. They were veering off. They had lost their focus on Christ. They had started to include in their worship Jesus and blank. They were stuck to their religious practices. They had lost sight of who Christ was. So he wrote this passage, or put this in this passage, so that it would draw their eyes back and point them back to Christ. Right before this, as we saw last week, he's prayed for them. He has prayed to see the will of the Father worked out in their lives. He's reminding them they've been delivered from the dominion of darkness and transferred to the kingdom of light. So here, he's going to shift into how that will can be carried out in their life, how they can walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him. It's through the work of the Son. And so here we're going to focus on Christ. It's the supremacy of Christ and his sustaining reign over all of creation. There's going to be words I feel like I'm repeating myself constantly. Rule, reign, authority. All of the things that remind us, though, of who Christ is. We're going to start in verses 15 through 20. We're going to go at times verse by verse and try to pull out what we are being told here. Now, you learned last week that this passage, or you learned about literary chiasms. And if you're still confused on that, that's okay. I am too. But I do know that they are an intentional way of writing in Scripture that helped the original reader remember, understand, and memorize. They didn't have scrolls. They couldn't carry around a pocket Bible. They didn't have that access, but they had their memories. And so when they had a chiasm, it would include important truths, and it would point to a central idea. So this chiasm, the fact it's a chiasm, kind of makes us go, this is important, okay? The whole book of Leviticus, FYI, is a chiasm. We're glad this isn't about Leviticus, but whenever you do realize that when you read it, it makes sense. It starts to make more sense. So you're going to see some parallel language of a chiasm in this text. In this hymn, the first part, 15 through 20, is a hymn. There's some debate. Did Paul write it? Was it something that they sang? Is it something they knew and he's reminding them? We don't know. But we do know that it holds some important declarations of who Christ is. So today we're going to look at 3 declarations, and then we're going to look at 3 demands that those declarations put on us as believers. All right, let's start. I'm not going to read the whole passage. I'll probably read one verse at a time, but let's start in verse 15. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Our first declaration is Jesus is Lord of creation. Now, you would have seen these 3 declarations in your homework. I'm sticking to what she led you through in those categories to try to keep it all contained for us. In verse 15, you see image of the invisible God and the firstborn of all creation. Those 2 he is statements. We looked at those. He is the image of the invisible God. That word image, that does not mean copy-paste, replica. Okay, I think sometimes we have a picture of Jesus, so that's what God looks like physically or something. That's not what that means. What that means is that he's making what is invisible visible. He's the revelation of God. He shows us God's nature, God's character. The next one is he is the firstborn. Oh, you'll see a verse there, Hebrews 1:3, where it kind of reiterates this. He's the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature. In John 1:18, no one has ever seen God. God, the only Son, who is at the Father's side, has made him known. We know Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So we've seen his nature, what he is like. Okay, the second one, firstborn. The firstborn over all creation. Okay, some have twisted this. They've misinterpreted this, and they say that he's like the first created being, that Jesus was created. We saw this, right? That's not what firstborn means here. They would have known Psalm 89:27, where it says of David, and I will make him the firstborn, the highest of the kings of the earth. Now, we know David was not the firstborn in his family. He was like way down the line, not what anyone expected, but he was given the kingdom, right? He was given the power. He was given the authority. Okay, so in the CSB, that verse actually says he's the firstborn over all creation. And that's probably a better way to say it, because he was given all authority. He was the heir. Okay, he rules, he reigns, and he has authority. Now, verse 16. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. Now we see here, Jesus can't be a created being because he was creator. Okay, he says everything was created through him. Jesus is the agent of creation. Okay, we know in John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. That phrase, in heaven and on earth, is actually the Jewish way of saying everything that exists. And so when we see in heaven and on earth in this passage, it's a repeating phrase. That's what that means. All things, everything. Over powers, thrones, and dominions. Okay, that word dominion actually stands for like evil dominion. Remember in verse 13, he said he's delivered you from the dominion of darkness. It's the same word. Okay, so it's clarifying to us that God is over all things. His sovereignty does not stop. Okay, now we know in Genesis, after the creation account, what did God say every time? It is good. Okay, so these evil powers and the evil and the things, they didn't start that way, but they have rebelled. They have rebelled against our holy God. And so they are walking in rebellion to him. But what he is emphasizing here is he's saying, those evil powers, I am still sovereign. They don't stand a chance. I have it. I have all authority. N.T. Wright says, though the powers are now in rebellion, he remains their true Lord. So in the Colossians, for them, they were mixing up in the spiritual world, and they were elevating certain things, and Paul's saying, nope. Remember, the creator of all things holds all authority. All right, now, it also says for him and for his, for him, right? Through him and for him, back in our verse, correct? So not only is Jesus creator and the agent of creation, he is the aim. He is the aim of creation. All of it is for him. All of it. Romans 11:36. For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be glory forever. Amen. So all of creation's aim is to glorify God. Ours, the created world, everything. And so I think sometimes we have to wrestle with that because we see things that we question. We question God's sovereignty, why things happen. But we know Romans 8:28, right? He's working all things. His sovereignty does not end. He still holds all authority. Now, moving into verse 17, it says, and he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. This is the middle of our chiasm, if you're interested, okay? This points to this glorious truth. In him all things hold together. But before that, we see he's before all things. The word before, he's always existed. He's the same. And then in him all things together. If we hold in him, all things hold together. We read Hebrews 1:3 earlier, but there is a last little part we did not read. So not only is he the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by the word of his power. His rule and his reign and his authority. He is creator, but he also is sustainer. He is the sustainer of his creation. When we see this truth, when we look around us and we see the created world, and we see the beauty of it, when we remember his sovereignty, when we see his authority, when we can rest in that, we have a demand. The only right response is to live in right worship. When our eyes see him, we worship. So for the sake of time, we will not read Psalm 95, 3-7, but look that up. It just talks about like the hills, the mountains. When we look around, we kneel, we bow in front of him, we adore him, we worship him because of what he's done and because of what he's doing in the created world. Now, if Christ's reign is over all of creation, then right worship should consume every part of our lives, even when I'm driving in traffic, when my kids are acting in rebellion, whatever it may be, the way that my eyes are focused on Christ, I live in such a way that I am living in right worship, whether it's not just corporately when we sing together, but in every mundane task in the everyday lives that we live. All right, so here in the first declaration, we learn that Christ is heir, he is king. He holds all authority. He's ruling and reigning over the created world, everything that has ever existed. And we know that the Father had a plan for that world, right? He knew that through the fall, sin would enter, and now he is working through his Son to bring about a new creation. The work of the Son is to reconcile creation to himself. And so we're going to see that Christ is Lord of the church, or the new creation, okay? It's going to get a little bit more personal. We're going to remember what Jesus has done. Jesus holds all authority over God's people. All of those who have been made new, they've been reconciled to Christ through his death and his resurrection. We're going to read Colossians 18-20. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of the cross. You're going to see parallel ideas here to the first few verses. We're going to see similar words, similar phrases. So on your paper, I tried to put these parallel ideas in a chart just so you can see how they correlate. This is what it looks like in the first creation, in the created world. This is in the new creation, what God sent his Son to begin the work of redeeming creation. Now, G.K. Beale, in his commentary, he said, these parallels show us that Jesus was the first and preeminent even before the first creation. And in his incarnation, his earthly ministry, and through his resurrection, he is still preeminent over the new creation. All right, breaking it down, verse 18. He is the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Now, we read Jesus was before all things, right? He was not created. He's always existed. We're also seeing now that Jesus is the head of the church. He's the founder. He's the source of his church. The church is his spiritual creation, the new creation, his body, full of the people that he has reconciled through his blood to the Father. And in him we're built up together. We looked at that in our homework, right? The body metaphor, he is the head, and we can understand that. We know what the head does. It controls. It keeps the body running smoothly. It causes growth. So it is with Christ. In Ephesians 1:22-23, and he put all things under his feet and gave him as head over all things to the church, which is his body, the fullness of him who fills all in all. All right, verse 18. Firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Okay, this mirroring language of firstborn. Earlier we saw that it did not mean sequence. It meant he was king. He was heir. He was given authority, right? Now, here we see that Christ was the first to rise from the dead, and it's also tied to his authority. It's tied to his first place in everything, just as it was when we learned he was the firstborn over all creation, this parallel idea. in Revelation 1:5. It says, "And from Jesus Christ, the faithful witness, the firstborn of the dead, and the ruler of kings on earth." After Christ's resurrection and ascension, where did he go? He went to sit at the right hand of the Father to continue his rule and his reign. We see his authority. The word preeminent, that first place in everything, also carries, it's intentional, it has overtones of authority. It would be used to say like a king who sits on the throne, who's been given all power and authority. He rules. So we see the resurrection. That's the beginning of the church. That is the initial movement, right? Because of the resurrection, Christ has defeated death. We can know life, not just here, but forever. And so in 1 Corinthians 15, we read that, right? Christ was the first to rise, but we would all follow. When he returns, we will follow. We will follow and be resurrected ourselves. Death is defeated. Christ is sovereign. Even his authority is over death through his resurrection. Let's look at Colossians 1:18. "And in everything he might be preeminent." Everything, preeminent. We see those words a lot, right? In everything, it means everything. All things. It's tying together the first created world, his new creation. In both, he should have first place. He's superior. He's supreme. He holds authority. Now, we get into the really fun stuff. 19 and 20 are key scriptures for us. They're the greatest and most glorious aspects of Christ's identity that Paul gives us here. Now we're going to talk about his reconciliation, the work that the Father sent him to do. "For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of the cross. In him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell." Okay, we saw earlier, he's the image of the invisible God, and now we see that the fullness of God dwells in him. He came as God incarnate. He came and lived in this, he's fully God and fully man. That's a distinct doctrinal belief that sets Christianity apart. The word dwell there would have referred to the temple, that God's presence dwelled in the temple in the Old Testament, in the temple system. And now it has come to dwell with us. Jesus called himself the temple, right? He said, "Destroy this temple, and it will rise again in 3 days." Okay, he was the new temple. Christ fulfills the role of the temple in which one finds the full presence of God. Now we know after Christ's ascension, we are given the presence of God through what? Through the Spirit. So we continue to be, because of his reconciliation, are filled with the fullness of who God is. He came as God incarnate. We also see in verse 20, "And through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of the cross." We could not be filled with who he is without the blood of the cross. This is going to be our fourth and last parallel if you're looking at your chart. I know I didn't go in order, so it's a little confusing there, but it says all things were created in heaven and on earth. And then we hear in verse 20, reconcile all things to himself on earth or in heaven. Okay, so created and reconciled, two parallel ideas. Christ's reconciling work is part of the new creation in which peace dwells. He has begun to restore disorder, chaos, disharmony, and lack of peace. He is making a new creation that will be fully realized when he returns. Obviously, it shows we needed reconciled. Sin had separated us. There was a divide. We were not at peace with God. We could not cross that bridge or the chasm on our own. There was nothing we could do. In the old temple system, there was a sacrifice once a year, but it was not suitable. It was not forever. One day, God incarnate would come. We have that hope, right? Jesus has come. the full presence of God on earth to become our sacrifice. And then he was the firstborn to rise from the dead. Death is defeated. We can know that peace. Christ is our mediator. He is our mediator, reconciling us to God through his blood on the cross. Now, reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven. We see that phrase again. Ever since the fall, we know all creation has been groaning. All of it, all of the created world. In Romans 8, it clarifies that for us. It says it was subjected to futility. Just as all things were created by him, all things will be reconciled by him. All things, because he has all authority. When it says reconcile all things, I think we could read that. It does not mean universal salvation. Everyone will be saved, full reconciliation. That's not what that means, but it does show the scope. The scope. It's the complete creational effect of Christ's work that took place on the cross. He will restore all things. One day, we know, as believers, we live in the kingdom now, right? We've made at peace with God. We're friends with God. We live in the hope of the gospel, that God incarnate came to die, rose again. We will one day rise again. We are made new. When Jesus returns, we know, we're told, every knee will bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord. His rule and his reign will be realized. This does not mean judgment will not happen. We know that there will be judgment, that evil will be put in his place, defeated once and for all. Okay? But even the evil powers will recognize him as Lord. That is his authority. That is our King of Kings and our Prince of Peace. All right, in our homework, she said, and I liked this quote, so I'm going to say it, God's overarching plans and purposes for creation from the beginning of time until the final judgment center on Christ. We get to see who Christ is when we remember the declarations that we're finding out right now, that we're reading in this passage. With every declaration, there's a demand. If Christ is Lord, if he is preeminent in all of creation, and we have been reconciled to him, he must be Lord and preeminent in our hearts and lives as well. So it's a full submission. Maybe it's an initial submission to recognize him as king and be reconciled to him for the first time. Maybe it's a full surrender, a daily surrender. That's what it is for me. A daily reminder. Lord carries with it the meaning master. So it means he's in control. I'm not. My say does not matter. His does. I liked the Pastor Andy on Sunday, the melody and harmony. Like, I'm the harmony. The melody is all him. I make him known. I live at peace with him when his melody is the key, right? So, Jesus must be above all in our daily lives. And I think that means we also see the importance of the church, right? He's the head of the church. So the individual church, we're called to live in submission to him as a church, in our service, in our identifying with God's people, but also in our daily lives. No matter what is happening, Jesus is Lord, and we are surrendered to him. As we keep going, and Paul leads the Colossians, we'll see practically some instructions for what it looks like to walk in a manner worthy, to walk surrendered to him. All right, Oswald Chambers had a quote that said, your priorities must be God first, God second, and God third, until your life is continually face to face with God. Always first. He's preeminent in our hearts. All right, third declaration. And this is, started in the last one, we see reconciliation, but he is the Lord of salvation. This is the last one we would have looked at in our homework. We see the power of Christ's reconciliation at work in our lives when we remember our salvation. I know I love a really good before and after. Anyone else watch Biggest Loser? Like when it was on? I loved that. I loved seeing they would come in literally feeling like they carried the weight of the world. They had all the extra baggage, mentally, emotionally, physically, and then they'd be put through the grind, where I probably sat and ate ice cream watching, but they were put through the grind, right? And at the end, they reveal this like new person emerges with a new like outlook on life, a new lease on life, energy, all these things. The weight had been gone. Paul's going to give us a before and after here. And I love this before and after. So let's read verses 21 through 23. And you, who were once alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he has now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. If indeed you continue in the faith, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you heard, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, became a minister. Paul is giving them a before and after. Remember who you were before Christ. You were alienated, separated, hostile in mind. But now, look at you now. Because of Jesus' blood, he came to make peace through the blood of his cross. You're friends of God. You're holy. You're blameless. You're above reproach. That's a good before and after story. That's our before and after story. That's the Colossians before and after story. He's reminding them that we have a new identity. We have a new identity. Our identity is in who Christ is and what he has done for us. He also contenders? You never know. If indeed you continue in the faith, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you heard, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, became a minister. Okay, the form of this phrase, if you continue in the faith, in the actual language, it does not mean doubt. He did not doubt that the Colossians would continue walking with the Lord. He wasn't saying, like, you're going to lose your salvation or something like that. He was not. He was just saying, if you continue in the faith, he did not have a doubt. Now, it does show us faithfulness to the end matters, right? Our continuing in the faith proves that we've been reconciled to him. Walking in faithfulness shows the work of Christ in our lives. Now, we looked at stable and steadfast. You looked up those definitions in your homework. Okay, I read the best translation of stable and steadfast, according to this one commentator, would be with your foundation established and your structure immovable. Ephesians 2:19 through 22. So then you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Christ Jesus himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole structure, being joined together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord. In him you are being built together into a dwelling place for God by the Spirit. Okay, we see some things in there that we've referred to before. We see that he's the head of the church. We're being joined together. We see that we're growing into a holy temple in the Lord. We're filled with his presence. We now are the temple of God, that temple system, God incarnate, and now we are given the presence of God. But we also see in there, it says Jesus Christ himself being the cornerstone. Okay, I looked up the definition of cornerstone. I asked AI. Hopefully it's right. Anyway, it says, the cornerstone serves as the essential first stone in a building's foundation, providing a foundational reference point for all subsequent construction and ensuring structural integrity. That first stone in a building's foundation. Christ is our cornerstone. He is our foundation. We look back to him. We remember our identity, and we build our lives on him, not on anything else. It reminds me in Matthew when he talks about the different building on the rock or the shifting sand. What happens when the storms come? Well, if we are on Christ, we are firm. We are immovable. immovable. So, Paul closes the section and he reminds them of the hope of the gospel that they've heard. We have this hope of the gospel, and it's worth our life. So the demand is we build our life on the gospel. We build our life on the gospel. When we cling to the truth of the gospel, the work the Son came to do and is still doing, he is still at work redeeming people, redeeming creation. When we walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work, only possible because we've been reconciled to him through the blood of the cross, God will build us up, each member of the body. We will live in right worship. We'll live fully surrendered, and we'll build our life on him. You know, a couple weeks ago at youth, we were singing the song, Build My Life. And as I sang, I had clearly been studying this, but as I sang, I thought, this is the prayer of my life. These are the things I need to continually be reminding myself. And sometimes I need to ask him to open my eyes to see him. And so I'll just read, I'm not gonna sing it. I asked Andrea if we could all sing it, and I was like, I'm not leading, so never mind. Anyway, I'll read the lyrics to you. It says, Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are. Fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Okay, Paul knew in this section of Colossians that if he could bring their eyes back, recenter them, zoom out a little, see Jesus for who Jesus is, the three declarations of his glory, our Savior, our King of Kings, our Prince of Peace, he knew everything else would fall into perspective. This foundational gospel will set the stage for every practical instruction that he will give us in these next few chapters. So my prayer today is that we've been able to zoom out a little bit, remember who Jesus is, renew our love for him because we've been saved, we've been reconciled. He has all authority, he's sovereign, he is good. And so, I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves, right? I need that reminder. I want to see his beauty, not just be busy with activity, but see his beauty. Tim Keller once said, and I'll close out with this, religious people find God useful. True disciples find him beautiful. May we see that he is beautiful today. Thank you.